If you want to write fanfiction that is true to canon characterization, there are 6 major traps you want to avoid. They could be the difference between a reader giving you gushing comments and kudos or hitting the back button. Out of character, commonly shortened to OOC, describes a character being presented in a way that is not accurate to their canon depiction. Imperfect parents get twisted into abusers, mildly annoying characters become straight-up villains, and good-looking villains become ooh-woo babies. As readers, we love fanfiction because it gives us more of our favourite characters. So when we find a fanfic that ticks all the boxes, only to see their characterizations butchered before our very eyes, most of us will click away. As a writer, what do you need to avoid so it doesn't happen to you? Mistake 1, flanderization. According to TV tropes, this is when you take a single and often minor action or character trait and exaggerate it to the point where it consumes the character. This one ends their sentences with "yeah" sometimes, so I'm going to shove that into every line of dialogue. This character enjoys pancakes, so now they demand to eat them at every meal. This character didn't notice their love interest blushing, so now they're the most oblivious person alive. It may seem like the obvious way to write someone in character is to take their most recognizable traits or moments and run with them, but those memorable parts only work in moderation. They can be great starting points, but they can't be everything. However, if you're writing a crackfic or parody, then flanderization may be what you want to lean into. You just have to do it intentionally and make sure that it's inspired by the canon personality rather than whatever the fandom made up. Closely related to flanderization, we have mistake 2, woobification. This comes from the word RWBY, which is a character that the audience feels sorry for and wants to comfort and protect. According to TV tropes, woobification of a character is a curious, audience-driven phenomenon, sometimes divorced from the character's canonical morality. As you can guess, the most common victims of woobification are villains with tragic backstories, good looks, and whiteness. Yep, white villains get to be coddled and have all their bad behavior excused, while POC characters rarely get such grace. I won't go into detail here, but I have linked a great Teen Vogue article by Stitch in the description, which definitely informed this part of the video. I really hate to bring up Harry Potter by She Who Must Not Be Named, but I have to acknowledge the term Draco in leather pants. TV Tropes describes it as when a fandom takes a controversial or downright villainous character and downplays their flaws, often turning them into an object of desire and or a victim in the process. The problem with this, whether it's directed at a villain or a hero, is that the canon character loses so much depth. Every edge gets sanded down, and every mistake gets excused, which means we don't get to see them struggle to grow or see them decline as people. Unfortunately, where there's a RWBY, there are also victims of mistake 3, character bashing. If RWBYification is downplaying a character's bad traits, then character bashing is when you exaggerate those bad traits or make them up. It's often in service of making other characters look better or breaking up a canon ship so that the fanfic writer's preferred pairing can get together. Death Eater Ron is the most famous example of this, to the point where it codified its own trope. While I understand that character bashing can be cathartic for the writers and the readers, it suffers from the same problem as woobification. You're robbing a character of their depth, or in the case of poor writing in canon, any potential depth. The best way to avoid character bashing is to take the time to reflect on why you hate a character so much that you want to see them get their comeuppance. Sometimes you might realize it's because you identify deeply with another character they oppose, or it's because the writer utilized that character poorly, or the narrative never holds a character accountable for their bad behavior. Once you understand why you feel the way you do about that character, you can consider how you might improve upon the original creator's vision or explore their blind spots. A bad fanfic writer will punish a character for annoying them. A good fanfic writer will examine why they feel that way about a character and then explore that in a way that enriches the narrative. On the opposite side of character bashing, we have Mistake 4, Protagonist-Centered Morality. God, I hate this so much. Protagonist-centered morality is similar to RWBYification in that the fanfic writer is so attached to a character that they will excuse anything bad about them. Loren's cast on springhole.net defined it as follows. In works with protagonist-centered morality, the merit and value of characters' actions, choices, and so forth will be judged largely on how they affect the protagonists and how the protagonists feel about it. Basically, anything your chosen protagonist doesn't like somehow becomes objectively, morally wrong within the universe, and anything your protagonist does is treated as objectively, morally right by the narrative, or at the very least gets excused. There is no trope I despise more than this one. Protagonist-centered morality often looks like lack of accountability. The narrative refuses to hold the protagonist accountable for their mistakes, usually because the protagonist didn't mean to fuck up. Like, sure, maybe she knew that wielding a dark artifact was dangerous, but she didn't actually want to kill all those people, and besides, it was all to save her friend. The families of the victims should therefore forgive her. I mean, could you imagine a story actually exploring the consequences of her actions? Skewed priorities. The needs, wants, and goals of the protagonist are treated as more important than anyone else's. Maybe the protagonist's best friend has a sick mother in the hospital, and taking care of her means missing the protagonist's big show. This makes the protagonist upset and causes an argument, but instead of the protagonist apologizing and making up for their insensitivity, it's the friend who needs to make it up to the protagonist for being flaky. Double standards. The narrative gives the protagonist a pass on bad behavior while also condemning that same behavior when the protagonist is the victim. When the protagonist pulls a prank on someone and the victim is upset, they're too sensitive and can't take a joke. When someone pulls a prank on the protagonist, suddenly pranking is awful and really immature. Since fanfic protagonists are the main point of attachment for the writer, protagonist-centered morality is often that attachment going too far, to the point where an attack on the protagonist might feel like an attack on yourself or a friend. Like RWBYification and character bashing, it robs canon characters of their potential to grow. I mean, how can you grow as a person if the universe constantly bends itself backwards to excuse every bad thing you do? The main cause of protagonist-centered morality is often mistake 5, too much self-projection. It's not inherently bad to relate your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences onto a canon character. In fact, it's a great way to add extra depth to your characters and make them feel real and authentic. The problem is when the character only ever says, thinks, or does anything that you would say, think, or do. Let's say we have a canon character who has a thick skin. Snide remarks roll off them like water on a duck's back, but you are more sensitive. Don't worry, I relate. As you write this character, you project your own sensitivity onto them so much that they fall apart over things they never would in canon. Instead, you could have projected your sensitivity onto them by peeling back that thick skin to reveal the bruises underneath. Not letting all those comments get to them is something that takes conscious effort. They choose not to react, but that doesn't mean they aren't upset within. This way, the character's outward behavior feels in character, while your own sensitivity can enrich their inner life. Too much self-projection can also result in mistake 6, canon characters in name only. This happens most frequently in alternate universes that take very little from the canon world building. It's when characters have the same face, name, and superficial traits as their canon counterparts, but their personalities are completely wiped and rewritten, usually to serve whatever plot the writer is cooking up. Characters end up being cast in roles like actors, rather than reborn as themselves in a different setting or scenario. Let's say you want to write a high school AU with a lot of classic tropes. You want the wallflower protagonist, their crush, and the mean queen bee love rival. Character A may be rather confident in canon, but you decide to cast them as the wallflower. Character B is the person you ship with A, so they become the love interest. Character C is actually quite sweet in canon and best friends with A, but they're the love rival in canon, so you make them the mean queen B. Well, now you have a cast that looks like the canon characters, but doesn't feel like the canon characters. Now, I've enjoyed fanfics that made this mistake, and I'm sure a lot of you have as well and might feel the urge to defend them. But if your goal, the literal reason you clicked on this video, is to avoid OOC writing, then I'm going to point this out as an example of OOC writing. To avoid this, consider how canon characters might interact with your preferred premise if you kept their personalities as loyal as possible. In this high school AU, character A still has their trademark confidence and is decently popular, but they feel like they can't be vulnerable because of it. Character C also gets to keep their warm personality. If you still want a love triangle plot with B at the center, the fic could then be about A and C becoming friends, only to struggle with the fact that they're crushing on the same character. Assuming that at least one party involved wants a monogamous relationship, then you've got a great fanfic about compromising between friendship and romance, and you got there by staying true to their canon personalities. I'd love to know which characters keep getting written OOC in your fandom. Are they flanderized, woobified, character bashed, or something else? Let me know in the comments below. So now that you know all the wrong ways to write canon characters, what are all the right ones? The video explaining it all can be watched right now on my brand new Patreon. It covers the core components of canon characters, how to fill the blanks left by canon, and how to marry canon characters with your desired plot. It also comes with an exclusive worksheet to match. To those who can't afford early access, don't you fret. The How to Write in Character video will arrive on YouTube in 2 weeks' time. If you want to make sure you don't miss out, the subscribe button is at your service. And that's the end of the video. Kudos for watching, kudos for liking, and extra kudos if you've subscribed and hit the bell for more dreamy fanfiction tips. I will see you in my next video, but in the meantime, happy fic writing!